told him I live here. He's on my driveway opening packages.
Sir, I didn't open anything. I'm just trying to get a signature.
This is your order.
Gentlemen, take a breath, one at a time, please.
Look, it's got his name right here. I knocked, no answer, so I called it in like I'm supposed to.
November 3rd, 2023. Marcus Williams had made 17,000 deliveries in 3 years. Never missed an address, never asked questions. That's exactly why Harold Kemper chose him for the special route. The GPS led Marcus down a dirt road he'd driven as a cop 20 years ago. Same mailbox, same dead oak tree, same house where 3 missing persons cases had gone cold. The man who answered the door smiled when he signed for the package. Marcus recognized that smile from interrogation rooms and crime scene photos. The door cam caught everything. The trophy room behind him, the newspaper clippings on the wall, and most damning of all, the delivery receipt Kemper signed with the same shaky handwriting from evidence files that had mysteriously disappeared. What Marcus discovered in the next 72 hours would expose a network that reached from rural Georgia back to his old precinct. The same cases he'd been forced to abandon, the same victims whose families never got answers. The night Marcus realized he'd been delivering death certificates to the man who wrote them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus sat in his delivery van for 20 minutes after Harold Kemper closed the door, engine running, heater blasting against the November cold. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the weather, from recognition. The same recognition that had twisted his gut in interrogation rooms when suspects got too comfortable, when they started enjoying the conversation. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. His shift supervisor would wonder why he'd been stationary so long, but the GPS tracker couldn't capture what mattered. The way Kemper's eyes had lingered on Marcus's uniform, the delivery company logo, like he was memorizing details for later use. The way he'd held the package, small, rectangular, wrapped in brown paper, like it contained something precious. Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled to the delivery app. Package delivered to H. Kemper, 1247 Millbrook Road. Signature confirmed. The system marked it complete, another successful drop in his spotless record. But the address burned in his memory. October 1999, Sarah Chen, 19, Howard University sophomore, last seen on Highway 78 after her car broke down. Her Honda Civic was found 2 miles from this farmhouse, keys still in the ignition. November 2001, Deshaun Parker, 34, postal worker driving home from his night shift. His mail truck discovered in a ditch, route unfinished. January 2003, Monica Reeves, 27, nurse returning from a double shift at Grady Hospital. Her Corolla found abandoned with the driver's side door open, purse and ID scattered on the asphalt, all within a 5-mile radius of Harold Kemper's front door. Marcus had worked those cases as a detective with the Crenshaw County Sheriff's Department, had knocked on this same door, asked the same questions, filed the same reports. Each time, Kemper emerged as a person of interest. Each time, the investigation stalled. Evidence disappeared from lockup. Witness statements got misfiled. Orders came down from Lieutenant Hayes to pursue other leads, focus resources elsewhere, let the cases go cold. Not enough evidence to justify the man-hours, Hayes had said, sliding the files across his desk. We got active cases that need attention. But Marcus had kept copies. Photocopied witness statements, crime scene photos, interview transcripts, hidden them in a safety deposit box downtown. Told himself he'd circle back when he had time, when the department's priorities shifted. 20 years later, retirement had come with a pension and a pile of regrets. Now he drove a delivery van instead of a patrol car, worked the graveyard shift instead of day watch, carried packages instead of a badge. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent 2 decades trying to get answers for families whose loved ones vanished on dark roads, and now he drove those same roads every night, dropping off packages to addresses that appeared on his route like breadcrumbs in a story he was still trying to decode. The delivery company, Precision Logistics, specialized in overnight and high-value items, medical supplies, legal documents, estate transfers. Marcus had thought he lucked into the job. They hired him based on his law enforcement background, said they needed drivers who understood discretion, who could handle sensitive deliveries without asking questions. The same qualities that made him perfect for burying police investigations. Marcus opened his glove compartment and pulled out a worn manila folder. Inside, printed emails from his route supervisor, Harold Kemper's delivery history. 17 packages in 3 years, all arriving at Marcus's depot between midnight and 2 a.m., all marked for immediate overnight delivery to the Millbrook Road address. The sender information varied: estate attorneys, insurance companies, private investigators, but the pattern was consistent: small packages, high delivery fees, instructions for discreet handling. He flipped through the paperwork, cross-referencing dates with his mental catalog of missing persons cases. Sarah Chen's disappearance, October 15, 1999. Package delivery to Kemper, October 15, 2021. 22 years to the day. Deshaun Parker vanished November 8, 2001. Kemper received a delivery November 8, 2023. Tomorrow would mark 22 years. Monica Reeves disappeared January 14, 2003. If the pattern held, Kemper would be expecting another package in 8 weeks. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text message from his supervisor: "Everything okay out there? GPS shows you've been stationary." He typed back, "Difficult delivery. Customer wanted to inspect package before signing. All good now." The lie came easily. Too easily. Same way they'd come when Lieutenant Hayes asked about case progress, when families called asking for updates, when reporters sniffed around looking for quotes about the missing motorists. Marcus had spent 20 years perfecting the art of institutional deception, convinced himself it was part of the job, part of serving the greater good. But sitting outside Harold Kemper's farmhouse, watching the lights go out one by one in windows that had observed decades of secrets, Marcus understood he'd never actually stopped being a cop. He'd just switched uniforms and learned to deliver evidence instead of collecting it. The question was, evidence for whom? His next delivery was 40 minutes south, another isolated address, another package marked for discreet handling. Marcus put the van in drive and pulled away from the farmhouse, watching it disappear in his rearview mirror. But he knew he'd be back. Some investigations never really end, they just change drivers. And tonight, Marcus had finally remembered how much he missed the hunt. If you're following Marcus's investigation and want to see what he discovers about those packages and the network behind them, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow we dive into the files he's been hiding for 20 years, and trust me, what he finds will change everything you think you know about this case. The 40-minute drive to his next delivery gave Marcus time to think, which was exactly what he didn't need. The rural highways stretched endlessly under his headlights, the same roads where Sarah Chen's Honda had been found, where Deshaun Parker's mail truck had ended up in a ditch. Every mile marker felt like a memorial he'd failed to properly honor. His phone sat silent in the cup holder, but he could feel its weight. One call to his daughter Keisha would ground him, remind him why he'd left the badge behind. But it was past midnight now, and she had early surgery in the morning. Dr. Keisha Williams, pediatric surgeon at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. His pride and joy, though he'd never been good at saying it. The second delivery address materialized through the darkness: another farmhouse, another long gravel driveway, another porch light illuminating a world that seemed frozen in time. Marcus checked the package, similar size and weight to Kemper's, same discreet handling instructions, same anonymous sender information. His hands moved automatically through the delivery routine, but his mind stayed locked on that moment when Harold Kemper had opened his door. Recognition worked both ways. Marcus had seen it in Kemper's eyes, that flicker of memory, the careful way he'd studied Marcus's face in uniform. 22 years had changed them both. Marcus carried more weight now, gray threaded through his beard, reading glasses perched on his nose. But cops and criminals never really forgot each other's faces. The homeowner who answered this door was different. Elderly woman, nervous hands, eyes that darted past Marcus toward the van like she expected someone else to be waiting in the shadows. She signed quickly, whispered thank you, and locked the door before Marcus had even turned around. Another successful delivery, another signature in the system, another breadcrumb in a trail he was finally starting to see. By 3 a.m., Marcus had completed his route and returned to the depot, a squat concrete building on the outskirts of Crenshaw County that smelled like diesel fuel and industrial coffee. The night shift supervisor, Carl Brennan, barely looked up from his crossword puzzle when Marcus checked in. "Quiet night?" Carl asked, the same question he posed every morning. "Same as always," Marcus replied, the same answer he'd given for 3 years. But nothing felt the same anymore. Walking to his Toyota Camry in the employee parking lot, Marcus felt the weight of every unsolved case pressing against his chest. 23 families who'd never gotten answers, 23 files hidden in a safety deposit box because he'd been too much of a coward to push harder when it mattered. The drive home took him through downtown Crenshaw, past the sheriff's department where he'd spent 2 decades learning to swallow his conscience, past the diner where he'd met with families, promising updates that never came, past the newspaper office where reporters had stopped calling him for quotes about the missing motorist case. His apartment complex sat on the outskirts of town, a collection of brick buildings that housed other people starting over or running from something. Marcus parked in his designated spot and climbed 2 flights of stairs to 2 billions, keys heavy in his hand. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with photos of Keisha at various stages of her life: high school graduation, college acceptance letter, medical school graduation, the day she'd been accepted into her surgical residency. His ex-wife Denise appeared in some of the earlier photos, back when they'd still believed Marcus could balance being a good cop and a good father. Marcus opened his refrigerator and stared at its sparse contents: leftover Chinese takeout, a half-empty carton of orange juice, condiment packets from fast food restaurants, bachelor food, the diet of a man who'd forgotten how to take care of himself somewhere between losing his marriage and losing his sense of purpose. He settled for a glass of water and sat at his kitchen table, looking out the window toward the horizon, where dawn was still hours away. His laptop sat closed on the table, containing files he'd digitized from those hidden photocopies, crime scene photos, witness statements, timelines that led nowhere official investigations were willing to follow. Tomorrow was Thursday. Keisha called every Thursday evening, a ritual they'd maintained since his retirement. She'd ask about his work, his health, whether he was dating anyone. He'd deflect with questions about her residency, her patients, her social life. Neither of them mentioned the cases that had consumed him during her childhood, the missed dinners and forgotten school plays, the way police work had slowly hollowed out their family until only obligation remained. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Keisha, Dad, I know it's late, but wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. Love you." Marcus stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. She was his vulnerability, his anchor to the world outside these cold cases. If he started pulling threads, if he followed this investigation where it seemed to be leading, he'd be putting himself in danger. And by extension, putting her in danger too. But 23 families deserved better than his fear. He typed back, "Love you too, sweetheart. Good luck with surgery tomorrow." Then he opened his laptop and began reviewing Harold Kemper's file. Some hunts, once started, demanded to be finished. The Harold Kemper file hadn't been opened in 4 years. Marcus scrolled through the digitized pages, remembering details that felt both distant and immediate: the suspect interviews, the witness statements that went nowhere, the forensic reports that somehow lost crucial evidence between collection and analysis. His eyes burned from screen glare, but he couldn't stop reading. At 4:17 a.m., his phone rang. The sound shattered the silence like breaking glass. Marcus's heart hammered as he checked the display. Unknown number. His first instinct was to ignore it. Telemarketers and scam artists loved the pre-dawn hours when defenses were low. But something made him answer. Marcus Williams. Silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then a voice he hadn't heard in 20 years. "Hello, detective." The blood drained from Marcus's face. Lieutenant Hayes. Former Lieutenant Hayes, though the authority still carried through the phone line like an electric current. Marcus had attended the man's retirement party in 2018, exchanged pleasantries, shaken hands, told himself the past was buried along with their shared secrets. "It's just Marcus now," he managed. "Haven't been Detective Williams for a while." "No, I suppose not." Hayes' voice carried the same measured tone Marcus remembered from those meetings where cases got reassigned, where evidence disappeared, where families stopped getting return calls. But old habits die hard, don't they? Like staying up all night, reading files that should have been destroyed years ago. Marcus's throat constricted. "I don't know what you mean." "Course you do. Same way you knew exactly where Harold Kemper lived when GPS took you down Millbrook Road tonight. Funny how technology works these days. Delivery companies track everything. Routes, stops, how long drivers spend at each address. Makes people nervous when patterns emerge." The laptop screen blurred as Marcus tried to focus. "Are you threatening me?" "Just having a conversation with an old friend. Sharing some observations." Hayes paused, and Marcus heard papers rustling in the background. Like how Precision Logistics has an excellent relationship with local law enforcement. Very cooperative when we need to review driver records, delivery logs, employee background checks. Company understands the importance of community safety. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. The delivery job he'd thought was random, that he'd stumbled into through an online application, suddenly felt like a carefully constructed trap. "How long have you been watching me?" "Wrong question, detective. Better question is, how long have you been watching us?" The admission hung between them like a confession. Us, not him, us. Whatever network had protected Harold Kemper 20 years ago was still operational, still covering tracks, still ensuring certain investigations never reached their logical conclusions. "Those families deserve answers," Marcus said, surprising himself with the steadiness in his voice. "Those families got the same answers every family gets when loved ones disappear. Condolences, sympathy, promises that we'd never stop looking. Truth is, some people don't want to be found. Some cases are better left cold. That's bullshit, and you know it." Hayes' laugh carried no humor. "You always were too idealistic for police work. Thought every case could be solved if you just worked hard enough, cared enough, sacrificed enough of your personal life. How'd that work out for you, detective? Still married? Still talk to that daughter of yours?" Rage flooded through Marcus so quickly his vision darkened. "Leave Keisha out of this?" "Keisha's beautiful, by the way. Saw her photo in the hospital newsletter last month. Youngest surgeon in the pediatric department. Must make you proud. Must make you worried too, knowing how dangerous the roads can be around here. How many good people disappear between the hospital and home?" The threat was crystal clear. Marcus stood up so fast his chair toppled backward, hitting the floor with a crash that echoed through the apartment. "If you touch her—" "I won't touch anybody, detective. But I can't speak for everyone. See, you've got a problem. You've been carrying around evidence for 20 years. Evidence that implicates not just Harold Kemper but a whole network of people who've worked very hard to keep certain secrets buried. Now you're making deliveries, connecting dots, remembering things that are better forgotten." Marcus paced to the window, looking out at the parking lot where his Camry sat under a streetlight. How many times had they watched him come home? How many conversations had they monitored? How long had his life been under surveillance? "What do you want?" he asked. "Same thing I've always wanted. Peace and quiet. No more midnight drives past the Kemper farmhouse. No more questions about old cases. No more photocopied files hidden in safety deposit boxes downtown." Hayes paused. "First National Bank, box 247 if you're wondering. We've known about it for years." The phone slipped in Marcus's sweaty palm. Every safeguard he'd built, every precaution he'd taken, every secret he'd kept, all of it had been an illusion. "You have 48 hours to clean up your mess," Hayes continued. "After that, people start having accidents, starting with idealistic ex-cops who can't leave well enough alone." The line went dead. Marcus sat heavily on his couch, phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone that sounded like a funeral dirge. His old life was officially over. The question now was whether he'd live long enough to build a new one. Marcus stared at his phone for 20 minutes after Hayes hung up, waiting for his hands to stop shaking. The apartment felt smaller now, windows like targets, shadows deeper. He forced himself to walk through his normal morning routine, shower, coffee, check his work schedule, as if maintaining the illusion of normalcy could somehow make the threat less real. At 7 a.m., he called in sick to Precision Logistics. Carl Brennan accepted the excuse without question, told him to rest up, get better soon. Marcus wondered if Carl knew, wondered if anyone at the company was innocent, or if he'd been the only one operating blind for 3 years. By 8 a.m., he was driving toward downtown, taking a circuitous route that doubled back on itself twice. No one followed, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Traffic cameras, cell phone towers, GPS trackers. How many electronic eyes had monitored his movements while he thought he was conducting a secret investigation? First National Bank sat on Peachtree Street, a granite fortress that had weathered decades of economic storms. Marcus had rented the safety deposit box in 2004, paying the annual fee in cash, visiting once or twice a year to add new documents. His insurance policy, he told himself, evidence that couldn't disappear from police storage rooms or accidentally get misfiled. The bank manager, Mrs. Holloway, recognized him from previous visits. "Good morning, Mr. Williams. How can we help you today?" "Need to access my box," Marcus said, signing the required paperwork with fingers that felt disconnected from his body. She led him to the vault, used her key in conjunction with his, pulled box 247 from its steel slot. "Take your time," she said, showing him to a private viewing room. Marcus waited until she closed the door before opening the box. 20 years of photocopied files, organized by case number, cross-referenced by date and location. Sarah Chin's accident report. Deshaun Parker's abandoned mail truck. Witness statements that mentioned the same isolated farmhouse multiple times. Crime scene photos that showed tire tracks leading toward Millbrook Road. Everything Hayes had just threatened to expose. Marcus pulled out his phone and called the one person who might understand. Tommy Rodriguez had been his partner for 8 years, before promotion moved him to internal affairs and politics made their friendship complicated. Tommy picked up on the third ring. Marcus? Jesus, man, what time is it? I need to talk to you. Something in Marcus's voice must have registered. Tommy's tone shifted immediately. What's wrong? Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? Silence stretched between them. Tommy had always been smarter than Marcus about departmental politics, better at reading the room, knowing which battles were worth fighting. When Marcus had started asking too many questions about the missing motorists, Tommy had warned him to be careful. When the cases got reassigned, Tommy had suggested Marcus take some vacation time, let things cool down. Tommy? Yeah, I'm here. Just thinking. Another pause. You know what, maybe we shouldn't meet. Maybe we should keep this conversation general, you know? How's retirement treating you? Kids doing well? The fear in his old partner's voice hit Marcus like a physical blow. Tommy knew, had always known. The network Hayes mentioned, it wasn't just a few corrupt cops protecting a killer. It was institutional, systematic, woven into the fabric of how the department operated. My daughter's fine, Marcus said carefully, but I'm worried about some old cases, wondering if there's anything I should know. Ancient history, Marcus. Better left buried. Some stones shouldn't be turned over, especially not now. You understand? Marcus closed his eyes. Tommy was trying to warn him, as much as he dared. I think I'm already in trouble. Then get out of trouble. Fast. Take a vacation. Visit family. Disappear for a while. Tommy lowered his voice to a whisper. And Marcus? Don't call me again about this. Please. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone, understanding finally that he was completely alone. Everyone who'd worked those cases, everyone who'd known the truth about what happened to those families, they were all either part of the conspiracy or too terrified to speak. He looked down at the files spread across the table. 23 lives reduced to paperwork. 23 families who'd trusted the system to find answers. 23 failures that had shaped his entire career and eventually destroyed his marriage, his relationship with Keisha, his sense of purpose. But Hayes was wrong about one thing. Marcus had 48 hours to clean up his mess, or 48 hours to finish what he should have done 20 years ago. He started photographing the documents with his phone, uploading them to a cloud storage account he'd created years earlier. If they wanted to silence him, they'd have to kill him first. And if they killed him, the evidence would survive. Some investigations demanded everything. Marcus was finally ready to pay that price. Marcus finished uploading the last document at 9:47 a.m., his phone's battery warning flashing red. 20 years of evidence now existed in digital form, scattered across multiple cloud servers beyond the reach of evidence lockers and departmental politics. But as he closed the safety deposit box, a new horror crept into his consciousness. If Hayes had known about the box for years, what else had they been watching? The drive home felt like a funeral procession. Every traffic light, every intersection, every moment of hesitation became an opportunity to remember what his obsession had cost. Denise packing her suitcase on a Tuesday morning in 2006, telling him she couldn't compete with dead strangers for his attention. Keisha's high school graduation, where he'd sat in the back row still wearing his uniform, having come straight from a Harold Kemper surveillance that yielded nothing but wasted hours and growing paranoia. Back at his apartment, Marcus pulled out a shoebox he hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside, birthday cards from Keisha he'd been too distracted to appreciate. Anniversary dinner receipts from restaurants where he'd spent the evening mentally reviewing case files, photographs from family vacations where his eyes always seemed focused somewhere beyond the camera's frame. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue paper, was Keisha's Father's Day gift from 2005, a coffee mug that read "World's Best Dad" in her 12-year-old handwriting. He'd used it exactly once before relegating it to this memorial of good intentions and broken promises. His phone buzzed. Text message from Keisha, "Dad, I have a break between surgeries. Want to grab lunch today? I know you usually sleep during the day, but I miss you." Marcus stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. She was offering him something he'd spent decades refusing, a chance to be present, to prioritize her over the ghosts that haunted him. But now, with Hayes' 48-hour deadline ticking down, even this simple lunch invitation felt like a trap. What if they were monitoring her phone? What if meeting her put her in danger? What if his desperate need to solve cold cases had finally positioned his daughter as collateral damage in a war she didn't know existed? He started typing 3 different responses, deleting each one. Yes, I'd love to. Delete. Sorry, not feeling well. Delete. Can we do dinner instead? Delete. The silence stretched until his phone rang. Keisha's name on the display. Dad? I saw you reading my text. Are you okay? Her voice carried the same concern she'd used as a child when he'd come home from particularly difficult cases, shoulders sagging, spirit diminished by another day of institutional failure. She'd learned early to read his moods, to navigate around his professional frustrations, to accept that loving him meant sharing him with strangers' tragedies. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. You're always tired. When's the last time you did something just for fun? When's the last time you took a real day off? The questions hit deeper than she knew. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd existed without the weight of unsolved cases pressing against his consciousness. Even retirement hadn't freed him. It had just changed his methods. How about lunch? She continued. There's this new place downtown that makes excellent sandwiches. Nothing fancy, just father-daughter time. Please? Marcus closed his eyes, seeing 23 families who'd begged for the same thing she was asking. Time, attention, someone who cared enough to show up. He'd failed all of them by prioritizing the investigation over the human connections it was supposed to protect. Okay, he said. Text me the address. But as he hung up, another realization crystallized. His files contained more than just evidence of Harold Kemper's crimes. They documented his own 20-year descent into obsession, charting every moment he'd chosen the job over his family, every dinner he'd missed, every conversation he'd cut short to chase leads that evaporated like morning mist. The real crime wasn't just that he'd failed to solve these cases. It was that he'd sacrificed everything good in his life pursuing justice for strangers while neglecting the people who loved him. Denise had tried to warn him. Keisha had learned to stop asking for his attention. His colleagues had watched him slowly isolate himself until even Tommy Rodriguez was afraid to take his calls. Marcus walked to his bathroom mirror, studying the face that stared back. Gray stubble, bloodshot eyes, the hollow expression of a man who'd spent decades looking backward. Somewhere in his pursuit of Harold Kemper, he'd lost sight of Marcus Williams, the husband, the father, the man who'd once believed police work was about protecting communities rather than feeding personal demons. His phone buzzed again. Keisha had sent the restaurant address, along with a heart emoji that felt like both forgiveness and accusation. 46 hours until Hayes' deadline. 46 hours to decide whether solving 23 cold cases was worth destroying the one relationship that still mattered. Marcus pocketed his phone and headed for the door, finally understanding that the real investigation had always been about himself.